are Heather and
12 years we've worked with to accelerate change in every aspect of their business.
Because we are in the fastest paced business environment that anyone has ever seen before.
So join us for the Evolve to Win show. Hi, and welcome to another Evolve to Win show with Heather and Paul.
Great to have you with us today. I want you to tell us what's going on for today. What are we going to today?
We are going to talk about why your emotions are negatively impacting your performance. I say that is because I know for a fact that it's happening, and it happens because we are human beings and we allow our emotions. We are emotional human beings. So it's about controlling that. It's about having that emotional intelligence. It's about really getting grasp of that our emotions are not who we are. And I want to give you an example.
Okay.
I'm a big time tennis player, really enjoy it. It's one of my favorite activities. One of the best books I ever have read, received any type of information on being better at tennis, was this book called, and it was written in the 70s, The Inner Game of Tennis.
That's a really good book.
Yeah.
And not just, yes, I've read it too a couple of times. I need to read it more often, but it's not just for tennis. Like, even if you're a golfer, any sport that you play, but I think that there are massive business parallels.
It's really the inner game of life.
It's the inner game of life.
And it's about understanding how tough we are on ourselves and how we judge ourselves and how we judge others, but mainly how we judge ourselves and how tough we are on ourselves. And so I want to give you an example of, how we are judgment-making machines. And here's the metaphor or the analogy. So in tennis, everybody's either watched tennis or they've played tennis one time or another. So you have player A and you have player B, and then you have the umpire, the guy who's scoring the game in like a professional game. And so player A serves the ball once and hits it in the net, and then the second time serves it into the net again. So they double fault. So
that sounds like me. I'll be player A.
Okay, I'll be player B, and you get to be the judge because I want to make this point, and you'll recognize that this is how it truly is with us. So player A, I'm player A.
I'm player A.
You're player A.
I'm the one who serves into the net most often,
so
right?
We don't confuse you.
So if I'm player A and I've hit my first serve into the net, I've probably maybe said something mean to myself under my breath, like, oh my God, that sucked, or you suck, or I suck, or Heather, that was stupid. But there are all kinds of things that I say to myself when I make a bad shot in tennis. So now I'm getting ready to do the second shot, the second serve, and I hit the second serve into the net and I lose the point. And now I've mumbled something else to myself, which is not only unkind, I've done it with a lot more emotion. So it's not only the judgment that I'm making about the shot being a bad shot, which of course it was, but also I'm making the judgment of me being like, oh my gosh, my serve is off, or I suck, or I can't believe I missed that. I should have gotten it. So I'm doing this whole dialogue in my head. Meanwhile,
then I'm on the other side of
player
the net,
B,
and I see Heather serve the ball into the net twice and double fault, and my reaction is, oh, good. So I'm happy about that situation. Now, exact same situation. We both were in it together. Heather served twice, double faulted. She's mad. She's angry. She's talking to herself. She's beating herself up. On the other hand, I am ecstatic. I'm happy. Now I've got the point. I didn't even have to do anything. And then there's the umpire, the judge, who's sitting looking at us play and says, well, Heather just hit the ball in the net. She double faulted. And Paul is happy about it. But me, as the umpire, I don't really care because all I'm here to do is just score. So there's three different ways to look at any situation. There is the emotional. So if it's happening to you, you can get emotional about it.
And by the way, I want you to think about this not just in terms of tennis. So if you're not a tennis player, you're not relating to it, well, pick whatever your sport is, or think about how you are at work or how you are as a parent or any other relationship. When you do something wrong, when you feel like you've made a mistake, do you have a little bit of a conversation with yourself in your head and make yourself wrong? Do you get emotionally attached to that? And believe it or not, from our own internal research over the years within our company, we know that more than 80% of the people who we work with usually are in a senior leadership level. Over 80% are really tough on themselves. They beat themselves up. They pour more emotion into what they perceive as a mistake. Said another way, they over amplify what they feel they've done wrong, and they're throwing emotion behind it, and they're so focused on it, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, is it right? Is it wrong? How much emotion should you put in? When you start to recognize, I've got a high level of negative emotion when I screw up. Paul's got happy emotion when I screw up, when we're playing against each other. And then there's that neutral judge who just looks at it and says that's a double fault, and there's no emotion. So what's the right way of being?
But the real point is, how do we handle our emotions? So it's so easy
Some of us not well.
Right. So in any type of, so sports are a good example, but this happens in life, just like Heather was saying. But in sports, what I recognized when I watch professional tennis, when I watch professionals play, especially young players now, they have worked so hard on this inner game of tennis, understanding that you can't be too low when you make a bad shot, and you can't be too high when you make a great shot. So there isn't this, people are old enough and they've watched John McEnroe back in the 70s and the 80s. The guy was an absolute madman, just running around screaming, yelling at the umpire, yelling at the players, yelling at the fans, throwing his rackets around, acting crazy. And I think a lot of people, that grew up around that time, we recognize like, wow, maybe that's the way you become, because the thing was, he was successful too. And so we equated being a jackass and being a great tennis player, that's how you need to be when you're out on the court. And then there were other players like Borg, who was completely emotionless. And people would always say, well, he needs to be more emotional. Meanwhile, he's winning every single tournament that's out there. But in my own game, what I recognized that when I'm too low and I beat myself up, I just go into the spiral, in this death spiral. And this just not only for sports, but this is everything that I've done, where I get so focused on what's wrong that I can't even get into the present again because I'm so stuck into the past.
So this is a really good point that you're making. When you're judging, other than the instant that you make that judgment, which may be in the present, in the moment, or it's maybe just after, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're judging and you are emotionally attached to what you're doing wrong, you're in your past. And when you think about it, you cannot be successful if you're dwelling on the past. The only way that you can be truly effective and a high performer is by being in the moment, in the present. So, I want you to think about this. The inner game of tennis is another way of saying, why are you smiling at me?
Because I was going to say that, you're not listening to this show at 1.5 speed. It's just that for Mother's Day, I bought Heather an espresso maker and we've been drinking espresso, and we are so wired up right now.
You really did. He got me an Italian espresso maker. So let me slow it down just a little bit. Okay. When you make that judgment, and we all do it, look, we all do it. And I'm not suggesting that you just stop paying attention to where you need to improve. I'm not suggesting that at all. But I really want you to think about how much effort and energy and emotion are you pouring in when you make a mistake. So here's a great test for you to take. This is how you know if you're putting too much focus and too much emotion into your mistakes. Let's say you had 10 things to do in a day and you got 9 of them right. Okay. So you did 9 really well, successful. And then one of those things you did wrong. You screwed it up. Do you spend the day, at the end of the day, congratulating yourself, acknowledging yourself for the 9 things you did right? Or are you really focused on the one you messed up? Now, most people that we come across pay way more attention to the thing they feel they screwed up, right? They over amplify it. And when you do that, just like Paul said, that's where you get yourself into this pattern that can become a downward spiral, because we only have so much energy to give in a day. So the goal, the key to keep yourself in the present is that when you do something wrong and when you mess it up, acknowledge it, right? Reflect on it, gain insight from it. Don't just sit there and beat yourself up and talk about how you suck. You just acknowledge it and say, what can I do differently, right? What could I do if I were presented with a situation again? How would I do it differently? And then just lock into who you're going to be in the future and just forget about it. Do you need to clean something up? Then go clean it up. It's that simple.
Yeah, and so the way I do it in tennis is that I have these two things every time I step on the court now. And it's one is I say to myself, no judgment. I am not judging whether this ball that I hit was really good or really bad. I will immediately have a reaction to it just because I'm human on a good shot or a bad shot. That split second when I hit it and it's out, I'll say, oh God. But then it's catching that, it's recognizing that there's no judgment to it, getting off it and moving on to the next point, getting present again. And the same thing with good shots. So even with good shots, it's not like I'm celebrating like crazy. It's just, yes, that was good. Move on, get present to the next one. The second thing is, I always say to myself, just when the ball hits, let it bounce, just say bounce, so that it puts me in the present. And so this is a tennis, strategy, but really it's for anything as well. It's recognizing that when you're having a bad thing that happens to you, it's to get off it as quickly as possible. When you have a great thing that's happening to you, it's also recognizing, celebrating it, but not celebrating it too long. We were talking about that before this show, about how many teams, especially like in sales organizations, that have a great month. And so then they celebrate like crazy for maybe a week or even longer. And then next month, they have a drop off because they've been celebrating too much. So it can happen both ways.
And that celebration typically is like, oh my gosh, we beat our goals. I'm going to take a little bit of a break. It's not celebrating like, I did such a great job. It's more like, backing off the activity because I did so much work to achieve this goal. The reality is, you go back to my 9 out of 10 game. Most people will spend more time beating themselves up for what they did wrong versus acknowledging themselves for what they did right. So I think it's important to talk about how we acknowledge ourselves. Most people don't. The answer is most people do not celebrate their wins. And if they do at all, it's usually only when they have a huge win, a huge accomplishment. And even then, they may not really have come up with a plan for how they're celebrating it. But how often do you celebrate the little things? How often do you acknowledge yourself for the discipline that you have, for the success that you have? When you think about it, when I give this, I have an exercise that I give to people to really help them balance the emotion and where they're placing it. And the exercise goes like this. Anything that you do in a day that is progress towards a goal that you have, right? Any progress that you make, meaning you sent an email, you made a phone call, you had a good meeting, you had a meeting at all, you showed up on time. All of the little things, you take a moment and you acknowledge yourself for it in your head. So the example would be, I sent this email that's been kind of hanging over my head that I needed to finish. So the minute that I hit send, instead of just moving on to the next task, I take a second and I say, great job getting that email out, Heather. And I do that quietly so that it doesn't sound like I'm talking to myself, but the reality is we talk to ourselves all day long. So I take a second, I say, good job, Heather. When I ask my clients to do this, I say, I want you to start acknowledging yourself all day throughout the day for the little things. They think I'm crazy. They're like, that sounds ridiculous. I would never do that. I don't ever do that. And I said, I know you don't ever do that. And yet you make the smallest mistake and you will absolutely have a conversation with yourself about that, won't you?
Yeah.
So why is it okay that we're constantly, beating up on ourselves when we do something that we perceive as a mistake, right? We do something or we something shows up like a weakness. We don't hesitate to have a conversation with ourselves. But why is it so wrong to acknowledge yourself when you actually do something that is, makes progress, that's good, that's valuable?
Yes. So today we want you to celebrate your little wins. But we also, on the other hand, if something goes wrong and it doesn't go the way that you planned, to recognize it. You may be upset for a split second, get off it, say no judgment, and move on and get back into the present. The one thing too is, we were talking to Bailey, who is our goddaughter, and she was saying how much she recognizes that we celebrate a lot. It's kind of become one of our things, and I think a lot of it has to do with that. We just like to go out and eat dinners all the time and we don't want to cook. So we always make it like, what are we celebrating today? And let's go celebrate at a restaurant. Let's go out. So we're trying to look for something celebrating. So it's also about finding things in your life to celebrate. Because sometimes if you're not and you're always looking for the bad things, start looking for the good things, right?
Yeah.
Start looking for things to celebrate and go and celebrate them. Go out and have a great dinner. It can be a Monday night and you can still go out to dinner. Actually, you probably get a good deal too.
Every one of you has many things to celebrate every single day. The question is, are you celebrating them? At the end of the day, do you spend time and go through in your mind all the things that you accomplished in the day? Or do you end up more focused on the things you didn't do and feel bad about it? We really want you to start thinking about having more of a balance. Start acknowledging yourself for the amazing human being that you are, and just see what happens to your energy level, by the way. Because if you're really focusing your energy on what's not working, what didn't go well, what I need to improve all the time and exclusively,
you will be wasted.
You will be
exhausted.
exhausted. So just try it. So just for today, and then maybe just for the next 30 days, if you're willing to really take this on and see the difference that it makes in your energy and ultimately in your performance. Just start paying attention to little things, have a little conversation with yourself, tell yourself good job, and look for the things that you should be acknowledging and celebrating, because we don't do it enough and you deserve it.
Thank you for watching or listening to another Evolve to Win show. We hope you enjoyed it and you have yourself a great and wonderful day. No judgment, just watch the ball bounce.
Celebrate the wins. Have a great day,
Bye now.
everyone. Bye.